Yep. Bird is leading this session. Jay Bird.
Okay, so since I was the second place winner of the 20.
I was third place, the loser.
Hopefully she edits that. All right, well, welcome back to a family podcast. I'm here with Brad Bowie and PT Bowie.
I didn't say that last episode. Whoops.
That's all right.
I think, but we talked about our family the whole time we recorded that one.
That's right.
So today, the topic of this podcast, which I'm just going to forewarn to people, I'd like to just put a disclaimer out right now. If you're an agent who doesn't follow the laws correctly for buyer's agency, you might just want to turn this off right now because you're probably going to hate me after this episode's over. And that's okay. Because as long as I make things better for the general public, which is who we're here to serve, then I guess hopefully you just catch on and figure it out and maybe, what is it? Know better, do better?
Yeah.
So we're going to
laws are laws, right?
Well, I speed.
Well, that's true. Yeah.
But this is an important law.
Yes,
it truly benefits the consumer, which is, at the end of the day, the best thing.
I think it does benefit the consumer. I also think it benefits, I shouldn't say benefits, but I think it's better for the agent. So I guess better would mean it.
Well, and don't you really think, before you get all into this,
okay,
don't you really think, though, that for all those years, like the buyers didn't know really what their responsibilities were either? So, this is great. We're laying it all out there. So
it's just, that's the thing is like, it was just a misnomer. For what buyers thought, we'll say 95% of them, is that they just got to buy a house and have an agent write their offer and represent them for free.
And it was free.
Free.
Right?
Everything's free.
Not free.
Is there free lunch?
No, there's nothing free.
Correct. That is correct.
All right, so we're going to tackle the topic of buyer's agency, which in the entire country became law as of August 17th due to the NAR lawsuit. I don't know if anybody, I'm not going to break down the lawsuit, but Brad, if you want to break it down, or PT, just give a little
there's
backstory.
not much of a breakdown, but just a little bit of a backstory.
Okay.
So in the past, we were able to advertise in the MLS what we were going to compensate, and I say we. So brokerages were able to advertise what they would offer another brokerage if they brought a buyer and close on a contract with their brokerage. So we call that buyer's brokerage compensation. So that was just in the MLS. One of the parts of the lawsuit, and it's a complicated lawsuit, so just the gist of it is that because we were advertising that on MLS, the lawsuit basically states that it is price fixing, that all the other brokerages know what the other brokerages pay on a co-op compensation, buyer broker compensation. So they wanted to get rid of that. And just the biggest deal out of the lawsuit is transparency, that there were agents around the country that would obviously go around and tell people that if you use me as your buyer's agent, you won't have to pay anything, which is not true because the buyer pays everybody, including the real estate agent and the seller, because at the end of the day, they're the ones that are writing the check.
We're going to break that down even further to just help the consumer, because I want this to be an episode that's not only for the consumer, but also for agents that maybe have not been trained properly or don't actually understand what should be happening in order to protect the consumer and represent them in the proper way, which is what we should all be doing as realtors. That's our job, is to take care of our clients and the public. So in Iowa, it became where we are. It's Iowa-Illinois border. Most of you listen to us before know that. And so in Iowa, it actually became law July 1st. And in Iowa, it was called the Iowa Real Estate Transparency Act. And then the rest of the country followed. In Iowa, I know everybody thinks we're behind the times. We do have indoor plumbing.
Way ahead this time, a month and a half ahead.
We do have indoor plumbing. We don't drive tractors, all those things.
Well, let's not say we totally don't. There are some people I have got stuck behind tractors out in the country at times in Iowa, so that's not.
America needs farmers,
Brad. They do. They absolutely do. Hey, I have a lot of respect. It's a lot of hard work.
Yes, no doubt.
And in the rest of the country, well, Illinois anyway, Illinois called it the Illinois Real Estate License Act, is what they called it. So what happened when those two things were brought into law, right, is that now if you are a buyer and you want to look at a home with a realtor, so a listed property, or it could be an unlisted property, and you want a realtor to show it to you, or a real estate agent, you would have to have a buyer's agency agreement on file with your agent before you can look at it. So what constitutes a buyer's agency agreement? There is 4 main components. Brad, name them.
You want me to do this right off the top of my head?
Yep.
You have the paper over there.
I
So
do. I'm shaking.
would you like me to read them?
No, you're going to read them. Let's see if PJ.
All right. You have to have a time period that you have for the agreement.
Term of agreement, yep.
You have to have the compensation amount.
How much the agents get paid.
Yep.
Who's who?
Well, I mean, that's a given, but yes, I think you probably need the name of both people on there. Score, PJ.
Signatures, dates.
That's
two other things. You said this earlier.
The area.
Yeah.
That
Oh,
you
yeah,
are
yeah. So
searching in.
Right.
in
The geographic area.
thinking through the agreement.
So it's the process of how the agent will get paid. Where are the funds coming from?
Duties of each party.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So, why is it that this is such a debate currently in our country?
In what aspect? Like what's
Like, why do buyers not understand? Okay, why do you have resistance?
Well, yeah.
And I mean, obviously it's a discussion, but why are buyers resisting signing them? Why do agents, not all agents, but a lot of agents, not want to explain what someone's signing? What are all the dynamics going on?
There's a whole bunch of different things. On the agent side, that people aren't educated on them, so they don't know how to actually walk a client through the entire agreement of what is what. And then from the consumer side, I mean, obviously they've been told for decades that if you buy a house, you don't have to pay an agent, right? Yes, there's stuff in the news, but I'm a firm believer that the majority still isn't fully aware. I mean, every single time that I either have a lead come in or I set up a buyer's consultation, one of my first questions are you familiar with the new law changes? And now we're 6 months out from it happening. And so you think that if they've been looking for a while that they would have either had to come across this at some point, but the majority still, would like an explanation or be walked through it. And so people just are a little bit scared to sign contracts when they never really had before, especially if they bought a home before.
Yeah. Well, and what's really interesting is, and I know a lot of agents probably didn't do this, but technically when you're an agency with anybody, you should have had a contract signed immediately. The difference is...
Why? What is it about agency for a buyer?
So the first point of contact, and if they tell you anything that's confidential or that you would deem that way, you have to stop them and you have to say that, hey, if we're going to talk anymore, I have to have you sign this. So it goes over what your responsibilities are as a buyer's agent, what you can and cannot do. But I know a lot of agents just didn't do that, which is not good practice. But going back to this, so in my entire real estate career, and I can't speak for back when my grandma was around, but back when I got in the business, you had to have, if you wanted to list a property, you had to have a listing contract on file. That you would never list a property and not have a contract. There are certain areas in the country where they have what they call an open listing, which I don't even know if that's legal anywhere. But why would you ever not have a contract? And it's the same thing on the other end, because every listing that you went into, you explained the contract that these are my responsibilities. This is what I'm going to do for you. And you always had a presentation. You went over everything. But because buyer agency came along much later, and it came along in Illinois, late 90s, early 2000s, where for all those years, everybody worked on behalf of the sellers. So there wasn't a need for a buyer's agency agreement, that they weren't necessarily looking out in the buyer's best interest. They had to treat them fairly, but it was buyer beware. Everybody was working on behalf of the seller. So they did a great thing when they created buyer agencies. So then it made it more of a level playing field, that everybody knew who was representing who, and all was good. The issue is they didn't tie up the loose ends. They should have, 20-something years ago, they should have created an exclusive buyer's agency agreement or a buyer's agency agreement that lays out all these terms, which has been around a really long time, but it wasn't part of the training necessarily. It was an optional thing that you should do it, that it's smart, right? Well, a lot of agents are like, oh, well, I don't want to do that. That they're not going to work with me, and this is not a good thing. But if it just would have been law back then, it would have been common practice. You change it over where everybody has agency and you have to sign an agreement, we wouldn't be where we're at today. However, we are where we're at today. So why is it that buyers are skeptical at times of signing these things?
Well,
that's the major question.
That's the major question from a consumer standpoint. So just one thing that I was listening to today when we were recording this, the BAM Pro Bowl used to happen to be actually at BAMX, and Jared James was on there, phenomenal, and he said something really funny. He wasn't really just totally geared in on buyer's agency, but he was talking about, because they started out by talking about how everybody in the agent or in the world, like realtors, were like, oh my gosh, the whole world's going to change, and there's no one's going to pay commission anymore. And actually, there are the stats that are already out now, like with we're not even 6 months in, that listing commission is actually trending higher, not a ton, but it's like 2% or whatever,
which is a lot.
Correct, 0.2%, yeah. And same with buyer's agency commission. So buyer's agents are actually getting compensated more, and so is sellers.
Right.
And I think the big reason behind that is because people understand what they're paying. So you can't agree or disagree with what you're getting paid if the person who's paying you doesn't know what they're paying you,
that
right?
Is correct. Yep.
So that's number one. But the other thing that he said is that we had, and this is, I think, really why we're struggling right now, okay? This all came into effect. These buyer's agency agreement, this becoming law, came on the heels of the COVID era, right? So as we all know, and Jared James made this funny joke, and he said, during COVID, there was more people watching TV shows about real estate than actually like selling real estate. So people are like, well, I just have to have a pretty purse and a nice car and a nice jacket and get my real estate license, and I can just sell a bunch of houses and make a bunch of money. So there we have it, is people that got licensed that didn't really know what they were doing. I mean, they got their license via Zoom.
Yeah, they didn't realize that it's not an HG TV show, that you actually do have to work if you want to be successful.
Right. So
you can just go in the office and drink some coffee and get a check.
There are some that do, and at some of the other brokerages that I've been at in the past, there's some that come in to drink their morning coffee and back in the day read the newspaper. But no, I mean, that's not, if you really want to make it in this business, that's not how you do it.
Right. So that's what he was saying, is that it seems like that's the reason why this is even more of a challenge, because PT and you have Real Broker and our marketing group has really doubled down when as soon as they heard this coming out and this lawsuit came down and the ruling came down. I mean, they started doubling down on training their agents. We were just so blessed that we'd already made the switch to Real, and we had that training available to us. Sharon, Tamir, everybody is awesome, and some of the other trainers in our company. But so we understand, right, like what the buyer's agencies agreements mean and why we should be using them. In addition to that, even if you didn't really understand, you were able to get training to understand how to explain to a buyer what it is that you do for them.
Yep.
And the problem right now is you have agents that got their license during the COVID era that all they literally had to do was answer a phone, open a door, and then write a contract for somebody and get a paycheck.
Yep.
Because there wasn't, I mean, you think, okay, well, why does that not happen now? Well, as a consumer, the reason why that doesn't happen now is because the market's different. We now have inspections for most of them again. We now have where you're looking at showing more than one property. You have to, the pros and the cons and what's the best fit for that buyer. There's all these different factors that really didn't come into play during COVID, because it was just a matter of how fast you could get in and how fast you could write the offer.
CMAs matter.
Yeah, right.
Can you imagine people are like, what's a CMA?
But current market analysis. So I mean, but everything was going over, and we were just like, you're gonna have to be out of escort. You just gotta determine where you're willing to kind of stop at this point.
How much do you want to pay?
Right,
because whatever that number is, you're just gonna hope you get a house.
Remember what we used to tell is that we were like, okay, so here's our escalation clause here. What would you feel comfortable, walking away from this house? So if you heard the house sold for $210,000, you're gonna be okay with that, and that's this is how you roll with it.
Yeah, I mean, you really did, which is crazy, right? I mean, like back up until COVID, I remember, a handful of times in our whole real estate career would we ever go over the asking price. I mean, literally a handful. And do you remember back, like after the meltdown, Andrea, the financial meltdown, when we would get houses on the market for like 6 months. And then all of a sudden one person would be really interested. And then the other person that was watching it's like, oh crap, I mean, I really want that house. And all of a sudden you would have 2 offers on the house for 6 months. It's like, where were these people? But now, because there's so little inventory that we still run into it every once in a while, but nothing like on the levels of 2021, 2022.
Right. So really that brings us into the buyer agency issue, is that you have realtors and people that got into the business during the COVID era that weren't properly trained, that don't fully understand buyer's agency. And I hate to, like, I know there's probably some of your agents out there, you're bashing our industry. Okay, listen, there are plenty of industries where there's people that are really, really good at what they do and people that are not so good. Like, it doesn't matter if you're a chiropractor, a doctor, a hairstylist, a lawyer, there's really good
There's
ones.
elite people, and there's some that just, I mean, they maybe should be doing something else.
Right. So, but here's the thing. In our industry, and really the 2 things, I mean, to be stellar, I think you have to have a third component, but the which is emotional intelligence. But the 2 things, if you're a really hard worker and you take the time to get trained properly, you can be really good in this industry. Okay. The third thing just makes it off the charts.
Yeah.
So there's no excuse for agents right now that cannot sit down and explain to their buyers what it is they do and why they do it and why they should be compensated for it. It's just that they have not taken the time to be trained properly in how to explain that and how to do their job.
Yeah.
Which is sad.
And it's absolutely true. And I blame it on brokerages. I mean,
100%.
That's really the biggest deal here is I really think that a lot of people convince themselves that as of August 17th, it's going to be business as usual, right, and nothing's going to change. The only thing is we have to take it off of the MLS. That's just not true. I mean, I really think if you're honestly representing your seller as a listing agent, to not have the buyer broker compensation on there and to not automatically advertise it is in the best interest of your client.
Right.
However, because anybody that got into the business before 2024, they were used to it's guaranteed that you're going to get compensated, and that's how it should be.
Whether
People.
I do my job or not. Right?
People, it is no longer that way. And it wouldn't shock me completely if BBCs were done away with completely. I was in a class earlier this year where the instructor said that might happen at the next NAR meeting. Why are the brokers determining what the seller's going to pay? Now, clearly they're having that discussion, but how deeply are they having that discussion with their clients? Are they just telling them this is normal, or are they giving them the real option? Because I would bet, if explained correctly, most sellers would say, I would like to pay you, and I'll determine what I want to pay the buyer's agent when the time comes, depending on the terms of the offer.
Right.
Totally reasonable.
Because the only thing that matters to this seller is the bottom line. What's the net number that I'm going to walk away with at the end of the day?
Absolutely.
I don't care if I have to pay Mickey Mouse and Jimmy Jew and whoever. What is my final number?
Yeah.
So as long as that is explained to them, they don't care. They maybe they're going to compensate the buyer's agent $1 million.
Yeah.
I mean, if they get their number, they don't care.
There have been a lot of them recently that our sellers have actually compensated the buyer's agent more than I would even recommend because the terms of the offer were really good. And they were okay with the bottom line, like you just said. But they didn't lock themselves into what they had to pay somebody right up front, which, in my opinion, is not representing your client. And
you hit the nail on the head with 2 of my hot buttons on this, okay? So can you tell I'm a little passionate about this speaking?
But as we should.
Okay, so 2 of my hot buttons. So what you just said about some of the brokerages thinking that it was going to be business as usual. Mm-hmm. The reason why, again, this is going to be a super unpopular opinion. I don't really care. The reason why is because a lot of those models are built upon bringing in new agents, younger agents, or agents that are just new and not experienced, because they generally have to pay their brokerage
and making huge commission splits.
Correct. They make a much higher split off of them. So what we mean by that is, newsflash, people, agents do not get a salary. We are commission based. We get paid when we sell something, and it's now based upon obviously what the buyer or the seller is willing to pay us, or we negotiate, I guess. So if you're in at one of those brokerages, you have 10 new agents, you're used to them going and selling a house and getting compensated, and you get a big portion of that check. Well, you don't want that to change, because if your new buyer's agent has to explain to a buyer what it is their value proposition is, well, do they have one if they haven't been properly trained?
No.
Which is the problem.
100%.
So now their business model, they have to rethink everything. And they're also the same brokerages that are sitting there with these big buildings and a ton of staff because they haven't changed with the times. And now they're trying to figure out how to do business.
Yeah.
So the person that's suffering in that whole scenario is the consumer. That's who's suffering. That's my number one hot button. My number two hot button is the agents who think it's business as usual, whether they're new, experienced, then whatever, who just are choosing not to sit down and educate their client the way they should be properly educated about what they're signing before they sign it and what it is that they're going to do for them before they hire them.
Yeah. That's
like the people that are calling someone off of a sign. Hello, Mr. Realtor. Hi, Mr. Buyer. Oh, yeah, I want to see your house. Okay, great. I'll meet you there. They pull up to the house. The agent whips out a piece of paper, says, can you sign this on the roof of the car? They have no idea what they're signing, which I do blame the buyer for that, but still, we're the ones that should know better. They're the consumer. And now they're locked into a contract, which is ridiculous that you're an agent, that you would lock someone into a contract. They don't know what they're signing. Like, where is it that you actually get your business from if that's your business model? And then we have everybody that's mad.
Yeah.
And nobody's happy.
And that's the way that it's gone for the last 6-7 months, is the companies and the agents that were trained properly understand the whole deal. Now, I will absolutely tell you that I think personally, on a personal level, that the agent should be compensated if they bring a buyer to the property. However, the difference is that it is not our place as real estate agents to determine for the seller how they want to pay commission. That's my opinion. But I do believe that they should compensate. That's always my advice. And almost all of ours have, other than, I think there's been one since the beginning of this whole thing. So it's not business as usual. It's in a different way. But I believe over time, people are going to get more used to this, and it's all going to calm down. But it's all new, and we have to change. And Real Broker, they've been excellent at the training on this, and we've changed with the times.
Right. The only way that this becomes normal, yes, over time it will be, but the more that the agent spends time on educating every single client that comes across their desk, will make the process smoother for everybody. I mean, I can't tell you how many countless times that we've ran into. We just had a client last week, concerned with signing a representation agreement because they were just asked to sign this agreement. They had no idea there was a fee that was associated as well with that, on top of what else they would get for helping them bring them to the closing table.
That wasn't explained to them what it was. It was just a fee that they were told they had to pay.
Exactly. And so it just comes down to our best interests are within the consumer and our clients. And the fact that this is why the law was put into place, is to make sure that this is being drilled to the finest mineral ever, that these are it's in the best interest, right?
That these are the terms, and it's transparent to everybody, so
Right.
they know what they're doing.
Well, and so the other part of it is, I think there is from some agents, okay, and I think that, I think this also goes back to, which we're not going to talk about this topic on here, but like it also goes back to the safety concern, right? As a realtor, right? Like we also remember the years we went through when there'd be something happen to a realtor, and then we'd all get really strict on safety, where we'd meet a client at the office first and do all the things you're supposed to do rather than just meet a client at a house, which is obviously not the safest situation. I think it's the same deal, but the problem is the reason why agents didn't do that is because they were worried that if they didn't agree to meet them at the house, they were going to miss out on a buyer and a paycheck. So they opted to just, ignore their gut. And I think that's happening a little bit right now. I think you have some agents that the reason why they're doing it the way they're doing it is because they're worried that they're going to lose a client. Well, so they're going to call somebody else who's going to meet them at the house. And there's actually been people that have said on the phone, hey, I looked at a house with Jimmy the other day. He didn't make me sign anything. Okay, well, Jimmy, if you're out there, your business is short-lived. You're not going to be around for the long haul, because this will all work itself out. They're going to start fining people. They're going to get stricter about the way the process is done in all the states. There's already secret shoppers out there. We know that. We've heard of that in our marketplace. And at the end of the day, just like anything else that's ever happened in our industry, the realtors that are the best realtors that understand their value and provide a value to their clients and do things the right way, they're going to win in the long run. And so are their clients.
100%. Yeah.
I wasn't done, but go ahead.
No.
Was that like a mic drop?
Yeah, it really was. It definitely is a statement piece. It's just interesting to see how this has kind of developed over the last 6 months and the consumer's perspective of it. Obviously, it's at the top of our minds, but if you haven't been really, if you're just starting in 2025 to think about you maybe purchasing a home or not, you might have not been, you might have been distracted by the election last year when this really was becoming a thing. So there's still these waves of people that still have no idea what's really going on.
Yeah. And if you're a buyer too, what a great deal. Now you have a contract with an agent who's going to be loyal to you and looking out your best interest and on the hunt for a house all the time for you. And then also, once you write the contract, you've been with that person the whole time. It's so, I know there's people out there that think they know everything about real estate, in and out, and all the rest of that.
And they've been in the business for 2 years.
Or no, not even in the business, just as a...
Oh, a consumer. Okay, yeah,
just
sure.
as a...
Because they Googled it in the World Wide Web.
Right, exactly, on the World Wide Web. But what a great deal that now the agents are protected as well. And I don't think a lot of agents look at it like that. Like, why would you, hindsight now, right? For 23 years, I don't know that we ever did an exclusive buyer's agency agreement.
We did buyer's agent. Yes, we did.
No, exclusive.
When I first got in the business with you, you trained me that way, and then we just kind of fell.
But why didn't we?
I don't know.
If
you were my mentor, why didn't we?
You look back at it, it was silly to run around with buyers that could at any time go to another agent, buy a home without you. The law change has been an excellent thing, and I really think the agents who have embraced it and the really good agents.
To what you just said, two things came in my head when you were talking about that. Because you're like, well, they could just run around and then go buy a house without you. So then you have the consumer that does think in their brain right now when you're saying that, well, if I find the house on my own, I should be able to buy it and I don't have to pay you. Fine. Then don't hire a realtor. If you know it all and you think you can do it and you don't need the knowledge and the expertise from someone to guide you through the process and make sure that you're looking out in your best interest, who does this every day, all day long, then don't hire one. That's fine.
I brought up the book before, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, always hire the professionals. When they did a study on what rich families, like how this works, is that they hire professionals, realtors, stockbrokers, those kinds of people that know more than they do because they do it every day.
Well, and I'm telling you, we're already seeing this trend in our own personal business. I know PT, you're seeing it in your business, and I know within our office, we're hearing this and seeing it in some of our trainings within Real. You're also having, it's a good and a bad thing that I have to admit this, but you're seeing realtors also work harder for their clients because they don't have to worry about the fact of how they're going to get paid. It's already up front and it's been, and I'm not talking about the amount. I'm saying they know that they're working for their client and they're going to get paid. It'd be like an attorney. Okay. Think about it like this. Can you imagine if you needed to have an attorney represent you for a lawsuit? Okay. And they spend all this time researching your case. They take you, they win it for you, right? And then you're like, you know what? I decided I didn't actually need you. I could have done this on my own, and then you don't get paid. Would any attorney work for you? No.
Of course.
It's the same thing. So I think that that's very important to understand. The other thing I think I want to say is, as a consumer, if you're sitting there going, and let's just talk this out. I never have an opinion or any ideas, so I'll let you guys share because I know you have thoughts because we've talked about this internally. If you're a consumer right now, and you want to buy a home, what is the best way to approach the situation so you don't end up signing something you don't know what it is on the roof of a car?
Well, if I were asked and I wasn't a realtor, I would say, why don't we meet at your office and let's go over this? Or before I look at the house and they ask me to sign it, I'd read it. But I really think as an agent, you need to be telling them right when they call in how it works. And I like what you said earlier, PT, is a great line is, have you heard of the new recent law changes? And most people will say, I've heard, or yes, I have, or I've heard something about it, but I don't really understand it. Agents, like even before this was mandatory, the top agents that I know anyway did not just run out and meet people in houses anyway. They met them at their office first. This is a professional job that we need to treat it like that too. Like, I'm trying to think of a good example.
You were very, very, I mean, that was something that you really stood strong on, and you trained both of us that way. I mean,
yeah, you want to meet them there, so it's a business transaction.
What if you don't want to work with them?
Correct.
That's right.
Yeah.
No,
and you're not just a door opener, right?
Well, and what I would say to that too, if it's really hard to turn off my brain from this side because I know exactly what you should do. But what I would do if I was a consumer is I would interview multiple people.
Yeah,
right.
Me too.
You don't go and buy the first car. You see the first TV. You see all big purchases, the largest purchase of your entire
and
life.
wouldn't you agree, especially if you don't know anybody in the real estate business, if you have a referral that somebody's used you in the past, sure, fine. But if you're just going in this thing blind and you just call who's ever on the sign, or a lot of people don't know this, but when you call into Zillow or you call into Realtor.com, you're not necessarily getting the listing agent anyway. You're just going to go meet them at a property and you've never met them, and then you're going to sign a contract with them?
No. Yeah. Sit down, see what you have to offer, see who you work best with, because that at the end of the day, you're working with us for months. Yeah. Okay.
Sometimes years.
Yes, years. And so you want to have, yes, we're entering a contract because we were working together. We want to make sure that we can gel, we can bond together, we can get creative, we can create solutions together. And that's the biggest thing. Interview people, see who you work with. There's a ton of them out there, a ton of realtors out there. Have a couple phone calls, and it will be clear. You'll know exactly who you need to work with, but you'll feel 10 times better that you looked at a couple options, and that you'll know that you made the right decision.
Absolutely, and I'm lucky that I've been in the business now for 24 years.
25.
Almost 25. Oh gosh, can we have like a what do you call it when it's 25 years, like a quarter century? But I've been lucky
Milestone.
that, in the last couple of weeks, I've had a couple buyers inquire on a house that I've worked with in the past. And then I say, you've probably heard about the law. That's always my line too. You've probably already heard about the law change, but I have to have you sign this document that says we're going to work together, and I'm going to email it to you. Let's go over the document. All three of them were like, no problem. Like, we don't care. And they probably would have signed it without reading it, but I always want people to read stuff just so they know what they're signing. And so many agents get so nervous about that, like, oh, they're not going to sign it. No, it's your confidence level on this is the right thing. This is going to protect us both.
Right.
And if you're well educated, you can explain it well, and you have a great value proposition, then you should have no worries.
Exactly.
Amateurs will expose themselves.
And that's going to drive a lot of agents out of the business.
That's what I said, Johnny. You're not in it for the long haul. You're going. Bye bye.
Exactly right. I'm not sure who Johnny is, but hello, Johnny.
They're somewhere out there.
No, but you're right. I mean, we're getting to the point now where if you're a good agent and this is what you do and you're respected and you know your stuff, you're going to get clients. If you don't, and you're just depending on Zillow and Realtor.com leads and any online leads, not just those companies, but any online leads, and that's all you're depending on, it's going to be pretty tough.
Because this business is still about meeting people face to face and building relationships. We talk about that all the time. It's how our business is built, and any of the successful agents, that's how their business is built, and that's why they're in it for the long haul. I'll just add to what you guys said. I think I agree 100%. I guess a couple other things that I would just offer out there for the consumer is, or even for a realtor that's listening, that's like, I'm still learning my value prop. I haven't been trained well. I recognize that, but I still got to make a living right now, and I don't want to stop, representing people. Okay, fine. Then maybe that it is like, hey, I will show you this home, and we're just going to make this agreement specific to this one property.
Right.
That way you can meet the agent and you can meet the consumer, if the client, and you can decide, okay, well, maybe I like them, maybe I don't, or maybe that leads to a follow-up meeting conversation, but at least you can go see that one house, right? But I mean, that's an option. I mean, it still locks you in if you do decide you want to buy that house and you weren't comfortable with that agent. Now you have to utilize them to purchase it, or you have to pay them and pay someone else.
But it's a much shorter period.
Correct. Yeah, that's the other thing. And like you said, read it. I mean, not all, this is the thing we've discovered by accident, because a couple times recently, this is another just crazy thing. Other agents in our marketplace have accidentally sent us paperwork that we should not have been viewing. And look at Brad's eyes. If you're watching this, viewing, and we could not believe the things that are on certain companies' agency agreements. It was astounding to us what they are locking people into. So make sure you know what you are reading. And if you do not, just say, you know what? I think I'm going to change my mind here. I am not going to view this house today. I really need to digest this and know what I'm signing. I'm not comfortable signing this. That is okay. Rather than lock, like PT said, it's the biggest purchase of your life.
Yeah.
So why would you just rush into something and put yourself, we had one. So that's number one on that. And then number two, my other thing is, the other thing you could do is go to open houses.
Right.
Yeah.
You're not required to sign any type of agency agreement to enter an open house or to go to an open house. Go to an open house, meet some agents at open houses. Maybe there's one there that you feel comfortable with, that you want to, go look at a house with, or sit down and have a buyer's consultation with. That's a phenomenal idea.
It's a great idea. And at Real, we're lucky that we have a great legal team that has created a touring agreement. So that allows you to, if you get a call and, you want to meet them at the house, which I still don't advise doing. I would still want to meet them first. But anyway, if that's the way you conduct your business, if you can meet them at the house, and it's a much shorter agreement, that's a much more limited time period, that you can decide at that point whether you want to work with that client or not. What a great option that is if you absolutely have to run out there and you have to do it quickly. But I still would recommend, if in any way possible, that you meet the client before you show them a house in the office. And most people, believe it or not, in my experience,
or a coffee shop or wherever.
But most people are more than willing, and they will come in, they will meet with you. If they don't, I don't think you want to work with them anyway.
Right.
And it goes back to the importance of I think people will respect more too from the agent if they're like, hey, I just want to run through this with you real quick to make sure that we're both on the same page and we want to work together. I think that's the biggest thing that I've kind of uncovered too. And it's tough for younger agents, because we talked about bending the knee a little bit and willing to kind of give on what maybe we think is right and wrong. Because newer agents, you want to chase everything. And once you get to that point where you are comfortable with saying, hey, I'm confident in what I'm doing, I want to make sure that you understand that I'm putting all my effort into you. We need to sit down for 30 minutes before we go see this house. I understand that you have a busy day. Trust me, I have a busy day. But
you don't.
But I'm taking time out to make sure that you're on the same page. This is for your best interest.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And if you're able to just, work over that objection, you'll be just fine.
Yeah, I would agree with you 100% on that.
Well, and kind of to echo on that, it just brought another thought in my mind to PT. It's like, you're an agent and you're newer and you are like really, I don't want to use the word desperate, but if you're like, this is how I pay my bills, right? Like, and you're so uncomfortable in that situation in paying your bills because you're so new, then maybe, we always say too, get into real estate, but know that you're not going to probably make a good money for at least probably 2 to 3 years. And that's if you're doing this full time the right way. You're going to start seeing this where you can. So either A, you should have something saved from a previous job, or B, maybe you're someone that you intern or you're an assistant for someone for a while you're learning the business. So you're still getting, paid something, but you're getting a salary from your, team lead or your assistant or whatever it is that you're doing. But don't just put yourself in a situation where you're making bad choices, because if this is really a career that you love and you want to do, making those bad choices very early on, Johnny, you're not in it for the long haul.
Poor Johnny.
He's an absolute smash. But yeah, first impressions are the biggest thing. Within the first 15 to 30 seconds, people usually make up their mind.
They pretty much know whether they, I hate to use the word like you, but if they want to work with you.
Yeah, right.
Really.
Enter into a working relationship together. Yeah. And that's why it's, okay, have you heard about this? Okay, great. Well, I want to sit down and explain it with you to make sure we're on the same page. build that trust.
Yeah.
If someone's willing to explain something to me and take their time out of their day, I think that's a pretty quick trust builder.
Right.
Well,
right.
And here's finally I finally have it. So I am a doctor, let's say, right? So before I do a surgery, am I just going to go right in and do the surgery, or am I going to
Put you out and you're
set up a consultation with you beforehand and explain to you exactly what I'm going to do? Well,
Right.
Of course, you're going to do a consultation beforehand to tell you exactly what you're going to do, right? Unless you're in the emergency room, which, let me tell you something. There is nothing, and I repeat myself, there is nothing in the real estate business that is an emergency on the day-to-day operations of real estate. Now, there are emergencies such as
flooded houses.
Correct. Those are emergencies. However, in a real estate transaction, day-to-day transaction, there are no emergencies.
That's right.
We are not saving lives. We are selling homes.
We might be saving their life, but that's a different story. But
Different story.
yeah.
Right.
No, but I think we really touched on this.
Are you getting cold over there?
I haven't. Apparently, I can't figure out how to put my darn jacket on.
It's starting to freeze right here. So
It is,
we're freaking.
Yeah, that's maybe what made me cold looking out the window. Yeah.
February weather in Iowa.
Yeah. But no, I think this has been a really good discussion. I just, it makes me so upset when we get the phone call from someone that wants to work with us or someone that was referred to us by someone else, and all of a sudden they realize that they cannot work with us because, one of our first questions now when someone calls us, it's someone we don't know, is, hey, have you talked to any other realtors, and are you in a buyer's agency agreement with anyone else? And some of them don't even realize they are until they send us the paperwork, and then we realize they are, and we're like, I'm sorry, but we can't talk to you until you that expires. So, hopefully your agreement that you signed, if you sign one, has an end date. If it doesn't, that's a problem. And it has a option of termination, right? Like how many days notice. And if it does, then enforce, put that into enforce. But just if it doesn't, I certainly wouldn't be signing it. And my understanding is Iowa has to, but we've seen a couple floating around that do not have one. But so that's my thing, is that that makes me upset. It's just unfortunate that, and I'm going to give agents the benefit of the doubt in this comment, is that I'm just going to assume that you didn't realize that the client signed.
New, right?
Right, that the client didn't know what they were signing. That's what I'm going to say. So what I'm saying in this is, know what? Now you know better, so do better. So let's make sure that the client knows what they're signing and they are agreeable to signing it. Don't leave out the details. Don't leave out, because it's a legally binding document. And why do you want to work with someone who doesn't want to work with you?
Right. And I'm going to go back to it again, just to really kind of wrap this up, is that this agreement not only benefits the agent, but it benefits the buyer as well. It creates loyalty between the agent and the buyer.
Oh, that's what I was going to say, and I got off track earlier, is that we this year, I don't know how I got off track, I must have made a joke about something, that this year, or this last 6 months or so, we have more properties that we have discovered off market for our clients than ever before. And that's because there's no concern about us reaching out to someone that's off market, and somehow then the buyer, knowing someone that contacts them, and then now all of a sudden you get cut out of the deal. Yeah. So we're putting in that extra time and effort for our clients because they've hired us to do that. Right. That's the big thing too. They have hired us to do that, to uncover every stone to find them their home, not just on the internet. That's a big thing. So anything you want to add to that, BT? Brad?
I just have one more thing. I have to give a shout out to Mr. Sharon.
I knew this was coming.
And the main reason is all the training. He took so many hours and trained our agents at our company on these buyer agency agreements, the reason why we have them, how it's going to be. And he was spot on. He did a great job. So shout out to Sharon Travaza.
Well, not only did he train our broker, he trained the industry.
The industry, yeah.
His online trainings were open to anyone.
He trained the industry.
Which is amazing.
Yeah, and that's the thing. We're just blessed to be part of such I feel so blessed that we are part of a forward-thinking brokerage that does set up their agents for success. And to your point, do you remember he actually did webinars for the consumer
Well,
to help them.
yeah, he made a buyer's kind of beware for the consumers, for realtors. It was great.
Wasn't there Sharon for president shirts for a while? We should
I
bring
did see one.
We should bring we should bring those back.
Yeah.
Well, maybe we might have to wear them on one of the episodes, huh?
Oh my gosh. All right. Peace out.